This is a national emergency. Important instructions will follow.
You cannot reach home in 10 minutes. Take cover in the nearest building. If there is no building nearby, try to find some solid cover. If there is no solid cover, lie flat in a ditch or a hole and cover your head, face and hands as fast as you can with some of your clothes.
The CBS network. It was a quiet Sunday night in May of 1956, and in living rooms all across America, televisions crackled to life as families tuned in to watch lighthearted programming. But this night, something else slipped through the airwaves, uninvited and unseen, invading the quiet houses of every unsuspecting family watching, interrupting comfort with unimaginable dread. And what followed would become one of the darkest, most disturbing broadcasts in all of American television history. It began in an unlikely place, inside the kitchen of a small London flat. Joan and Peter Folds, a married couple, both experienced animators and artists, had been quietly working on an experimental short film, something unlike anything anyone had ever seen on television before. They called it a short vision. A grim allegorical warning wrapped in shadowy visuals and surreal narration. But it was never meant to be mainstream media, and it was certainly never meant to be viewed by children. The content within was much too disturbing. The Ed Sullivan Show, one of the most popular television programs of its time, was typically known for wholesome, family-friendly entertainment, drawing in millions of viewers each week, including parents and their children.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, yes, that's right, Elvis Presley.
Audiences expected musical performances, comedy routines, and lighthearted variety acts. Though 1956 was not a time of peace, the world had already seen what atomic fire could do, and now it sat on edge, unsure who would strike next. Children were being taught to hide under desks in case of nuclear attack, as if that could really protect them.
It's very dangerous.
But beneath the polished optimism of American life was a gnawing dread growing within every American citizen. Fear of the seemingly inevitable. It was a haunting fear that nobody wanted to talk about, until the night of May 27, 1956, when an episode of The Ed Sullivan Show somehow got a hold of a copy of the disturbing short film, giving everyone watching an unexpected, unfiltered view of what they all preferred to hide from. This episode began like any other. The evening's advertised lineup included singer Kate Smith, a ventriloquist act, a comedian, an acrobat troupe, though nowhere was a short film about nuclear war mentioned. Even Sullivan himself seemed a bit nervous about the content. As the time came to introduce the short live on air, he issued a cautious prelude.
Just last week you read about the H-bomb being dropped. Now two great English writers, two very imaginative writers. I'm going to tell you, if you have youngsters in the living room, tell them not to be alarmed at this, 'cause it's a fantasy. The whole thing is animated. But two English writers, Joan and Peter Folds, wrote a thing which they called a short vision, in which they wondered what might happen to the animal population of the world if an H-bomb were dropped. It's produced by George K. Arthur, and I'd like you to see it. It is grim, but I think we can all stand it to realize that in war, there is no winner.
Then, without any serious warning, millions of viewers across the U.S., entire families gathered in front of their televisions in living rooms all across America, watched as a strange, shape-shifting object appeared in the sky.
It seemed very small at first, and because it was so big, it seemed to move slowly.
The narration was calm, too calm, as if just a bedtime story. But then, as everyone was watching, the screen erupted in a white light, bringing merciless destruction to everything in its path, as the entire world burned. Human faces melted into skulls. The skin blackened as their eyes turned to liquid slipping from their sockets, flesh peeling away in layers, people aging in seconds, contorting in agony before collapsing into ashes. Absolutely everything is incinerated. Entire cities vanish in fire. And through it all, the narration continues, eerily detached.
Were destroyed, and the leopard, and the deer, and the rat, and the owl.
No one is spared, not even the animals. All life, completely obliterated. And then, silence, a small flame flickering in the darkness, the last remnant of life, until that too was extinguished. Ed Sullivan returned to the screen in front of a stunned, silent studio audience. No clapping, no laughter, just stunned faces and dead air. He smiled nervously.
See?
He said, before quickly introducing a musical number. But the damage was done. CBS was flooded with calls. Some praised the bold message, but most were outraged. Parents lit up phone lines demanding to know why something so graphic had been shown, without any real warning, on one of the country's most family-friendly programs. Children had been sitting cross-legged on living room floors, expecting puppets or slapstick comedy acts. Instead, they watched people melt into horrible, contorted faces. One newspaper ran still frames from the film's most disturbing sequence, a horrific face dissolving, in full view, on the front page. Reports came in from across the country, kids crying in their beds, refusing to sleep, some asking disturbing questions. There was one 5-year-old boy in a story Sullivan himself later repeated, who turned to his father, terrified, as he asked,
"Daddy, who's not to shoot you?"
Despite the backlash and traumatized families, just 2 weeks later, on June 10th, a short vision was broadcast again. Ed Sullivan, standing once more before a national audience, announced that due to overwhelming public interest and requests from civil defense organizations across the country, they were going to show the film a second time. But this time, his tone was different. He didn't smile. He didn't make jokes. Instead, he issued a firm warning.
This is a harrowing experience for children. If you have youngsters in the room, please take them out now. This film is something the country should see, but it is not for them.
Despite the warning, audiences still tuned in, curious and anxious. Some maybe just trying to make sense of the storm the first broadcast had caused. And again, the film rolled. Again, the faces burned as the world went silent. And again, the backlash was overwhelming. Parents who had missed the first airing were blindsided by the repeat. Newspapers lit up with angry editorials. Letters poured in, scolding Sullivan and CBS for, quote, subjecting American families to a broadcast of horrible death and despair, not once, but twice. Schools reported children having nightmares. Some kids reportedly refused to watch television for days after. The illusion of TV as a safe space had been violently infiltrated by the terrifying imagery of death and destruction. And in 1956, during a time when duck and cover drills were being taught to children who wore dog tags to school in case their bodies needed identifying after a blast, the message hit too close to home because it was too real and too possible. Sullivan defended the choice. He said the public needed to see what was at stake, that a short vision wasn't just animation, it was a statement. But for many families, it felt traumatic. The visuals much too graphic for their children. It was something they didn't ask to see, and it was something they didn't want to ever think about. I think what lingers with me most is the idea of seeing this through the eyes of a child during this time of uncertainty in the world, already living in fear, raised under the looming shadow of a bomb they were told could fall at any moment. And in that moment, everything they knew would be gone. And not that it would just vanish into thin air, but that it would be violently taken. Their homes, their families, their lives, everything decimated by fire. So when they saw those faces on the screen, painted, yes, but melting, screaming, and suffering, it didn't feel like fiction. It felt like a mirror held up to every one of their worst nightmares, everything they feared to lose. And in that moment, it was all too easy to imagine themselves, or the people they loved, as the ones with their faces melting and burning in flames. For them, it was a terrifying glimpse of what might be. But what made it worse was knowing it had already happened, twice. Only now didn't have to witness it firsthand to begin to feel the weight of it. In cities like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people had already lived this nightmare, having bombs fall on their homes and their families. They had already endured the fire, the immense loss, and the unspeakable suffering that this film so vividly portrayed. What they saw on screen wasn't fiction at all. It was history, stripped of mercy, playing out in a haunting display of paint and fire, a haunting echo of what humanity had already done and could do again at any moment.